practice. They had a practice today, which apparently was not open for the likes of you. They didn't want the Dave Wymans of the world running around there. So you were shut out of what was going on. You just had production meetings out there.
Yeah, which was cool. I mean, they brought in some interesting players, including Jalen Milroe. So yeah, it was cool. You got Patrick O'Connell came in as well, and then we talked to George Holani. But I mean, I think Milroe is one of those guys you'd rather hear talk than watch him play, just because he really is amazing. I mean, everybody's been raving about him, but just the way he answers questions, I mean, he's unbelievably thoughtful and just like next level as far as like the way he thinks about football. So, but yeah, I mean, that part was good. And but yeah, I would have liked to have seen more practices and out on the field. But I don't think that was a last second deal. That was just surprising to me because I just assumed that they would do the same thing. But the game is tomorrow, and that's typically what you do. You just do walkthroughs. So yeah, that's just the way they planned it.
All right. Well, Leonard Williams was talking about this and explains why he likes joint practices and the benefits that he sees coming from them.
I remember at one point when I was young, I didn't like it. It's like sometimes hard to like travel and like be in a hotel and all that type of stuff. But for me, it's nice to get a different look. It's nice to see where you're at as a team, see how we practice differently from another team. And for myself, it's like sometimes after a while, if I'm practicing against the same guy, I start to know certain tales about that guy that makes it easy for me in practice where, I could play like super fast in practice because I'm seeing all these little small tells because I've been practicing against the guy every day. So for me, it's like this kind of gets me like more game time ready, more season ready when I'm, get to go against the guy for the first time.
You know what I love about that, Dave, is he just turned 31 years old in June, and he's talking about, back when I was young, I used to feel this way, but now he just turned 31, and he's talking like this, salty old veteran out there who's, I guess in NFL years he is. Obviously, he's been in the league a long time, but it's amazing to hear these guys talk, and he just turned 31 years old.
Well, and he doesn't seem like it, right? I mean, just the way that, first of all, he stays in excellent shape, but I don't know, just the way he carries himself. If you would ask me, I would have said he's 26, 27. But, yeah, and he was the one that delivered maybe the funniest thing I heard yesterday when he was yelling at the guy. We don't even know who you are. What are you doing? And he's like, he said something like, go back and do rehabbing or whatever. You're not even in a uniform. Like, nobody knows you. He was just insulting the hell out of him. So
basically, you're a nobody that I shouldn't be concerning myself with.
It was like Ryan Roland Smith, remember when he said, dude, you're an out. That's how I look at you. You're an out.
Yeah. Yeah, like don't flatter yourself, buddy. You're an out. Yeah. So I love that. So there's his take on it. And then Julian Love. Now this is a guy who seems older, not in the way that he looks or act. He speaks like a grizzled old veteran, and he's 27 or 28 years old. But this is a guy who just speaks like he's ready to be a coach right now. Anyway, he's talking about all the situational work they were able to get done against the Packers.
I mean, we were able to go through team run, team pass, one-on-ones, 2-minute situation, the move the ball situation. Like you could work all those things against another team that's. You're just playing instinctually, you're playing your rules, and you're not as much like focused on kind of, when we play against ourselves, you just know your guys, kind of know how they're going to do the things. And so it lets you play free, and you just got to play by your rules when you go against another team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm, a guy, like you said, wise beyond his years. But, yeah, it's kind of a theme that, I heard today also from the players that they brought in there, Patrick O'Connell and Holani and Milroe. And it's that, once you get down what your defense is, then you can start to look at what are they doing offensively. And, that was what Milroe was saying about, because this is like his third or fourth offensive coordinator in the last four years for him. And so once you get to the point where you understand the offense or the defense that you're running fully, then you can start to concentrate on, because I remember once the season starts, you're not really talking, every once in a while you'd have like a refresher, or what's beating us right now, but 90% of the prep is looking at the opposing offense or defense. And, So when you truly have, your side of the ball down, and for Julian's, in his case, the defense, then you can start to, look at all the little tells and hints that they have, whether it's, a lineman lining up a certain way or a certain formation and all the tendencies. Everything is focused on the opponent. And, that it sounds like that's where they are. And, it's funny, Bob, I remember when you and I did that thing where we were talking about, the 5 reasons why the Seahawks will make it into the playoffs. We were like, okay, they start July 23rd. They end in August 23rd. They have, basically 1 month, and they need to start fast. And I'll tell you what, based on that Kansas City game, and we'll see what happens against Green Bay. I think, their defense might be a little bit better, but it'll be interesting to see, how if they can do that again, because it seems like, listening to the younger guys even, that they understand the offense and why they're doing things. And it's just the way that Kubiak installs the offense that it just makes sense to everybody.
Right. Except this game's going to be harder to judge because I don't anticipate we're going to see any of the starters, right? So we're just going to be looking at how are the young guys adjusting to this. So I guess my point would be if they go out there and they have a hard time offensively, or they don't look as efficient on the ground or whatever, I'm going to be looking at that going, well, okay, that's not the guys we're running out there in week 1 though either. This is the depth we're looking at.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I think though, just the general understanding, and that's really all we care about. I don't care about individual play or individual players. It's just about, can they, because you look at through camp, these guys are getting lots of reps. There's lots of reps. And there's, I think for, the younger guys, they pretty much have it down, and that's what we talked about. And that's what I'm hearing anyway. We'll see what happens, but what you hear from the younger guys and really pretty much everybody on that offense is that, hey, we've got this thing down. We understand how it works.
Hey, real quick before we I want to touch on this offense as far as Kubiak's impact. But are there any players that stand out in your mind going into this game that maybe are somebody we've talked about or somebody the fans are familiar with that you look at and say, this guy needs to stand out in this game in order to make the team? We're not talking about starting. We're talking about just making this roster, whether it's a Cody White, whether it's or maybe you think Bobo's already locked it up, or just any other players that maybe we've mentioned in the past that you feel like this game is crucial to their spot on this roster.
Yeah, when camp started, you mentioned Bobo. I did think that maybe he would be a casualty, but the way they love how he plays on special teams. And that's the same thing for Derek Young, another guy I think that has solidified his spot on the team. So, I think some of the younger guys, you mentioned Cody White, that's probably one, and probably also a guy that you might be able to cut and slide through and get back on your practice squad. So, and Schneider always says that like the most secretive time is before the draft, but he said that when it's cut down time, the teams typically will put everything out there and say, hey, this is what we need. And he said the information flows as opposed to it's the opposite of what happens around the draft.
Yeah, my one name, and it's not a guy we've talked about a bunch, but he felt like you and I talk about this all the time. Every year there's that standout guy that we look at and go, whoa, this guy looks like he's done everything. He's good for him. He's made the team, and then lo and behold, he gets released. I feel like Jacardia White could be that guy. Right, excuse me, could be that guy because he's looked good. It's preseason, but he's looks like he's got some burst and some shiftiness to him, and you kind of like what you see. But I just don't know. You got K9, you got Charbonnet, you got Holani, you got Damian Martinez, who you drafted. I assume all those guys are going to be there. I don't know how many running backs they're going to carry. I just don't. I feel like he could be one of the odd men out that we've kind of has caught our eye so far in preseason.
Yeah, and if you look down on the depth chart, or you look at the draft choices from this last year, you got Damian Martinez in there as well. And I haven't seen a whole lot from him. Would he make it over George Holani? I don't know. It seems like Holani has.
in.
Yeah, I think so too. But I'm not sure what they're going to do in that case. You could also, look at some of these offensive linemen they drafted, like Mason Richmond and, Bryce Cabledew. And I saw all those guys. By the way, I was walking through the lobby, and all the rookies, it looked like the entire group were playing cards down there on one of the big tables down in the lobby. But bonding, which is always good. But I'm just curious,
cool.
What's gonna happen with some of those late round.
Just one of the things that has got me optimistic or fired up about this offense is just watching Kubiak's scheme out there and how it's looked. Do you think that scheme, based on the fact that it's really heavy emphasis on the rushing attack, and it seems to suit these O-linemen, at least in preseason so far? We'll see. But does that take a little bit of the heat off of Darnold early in the season, that he doesn't need to pass them the victory, that if he's not completely dialed into the offense, he's got a little bit of slack because it just seems to fit the guys they have, and it is really run heavy, at least to this point?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It's huge. And offensive linemen, as you know, and you'll hear in the Zabel interview, they love to run block, love running the ball. So, yeah, and then, like you said, I mean, if they get into a situation where they have to, if they fall behind, this is where your defense is going to be key, by 21 or 28 points or whatever. Now all of a sudden you gotta air it out, and then that's going to put more pressure on Darnold, and that's what they did to Geno last year, and he actually handled it fairly well. But he threw some red zone picks, and there was just a lot of pressure on Geno. And yeah, I mean, when you can run the ball and then all of a sudden start running the play action stuff, and also they move the pocket. Gray Zabel called it an offensive lineman's dream to run this offense, because it just makes it easier. And that's what, we were complaining so much about the offensive line last year, and rightfully so, but it was also that they were put in some, ridiculous situations, and they just couldn't run the ball. So, I mean, when somebody, those pass rushers are pinning their ears back and getting after the quarterback because they know they can't run the ball on us. So, yeah, it takes a ton of pressure off, and I think that's what they saw in Sam Darnold. Like, and I'm not saying he's a game manager, but, it certainly will help his case, kind of like Russ, his rookie year.
Yeah. One quick thought before we get to take two from Sam Darnold. Just talking about the success he had with JSN against the Packers and how they've started to really build a connection out there.
I think just all the time that we put in after practice, if something doesn't necessarily click during practice, we're always, all right, let's get that after practice. And that's kind of the way we've been doing things in training camp, and it's obviously been paying off a little bit. So we're just going to continue to do that and work the timing of different routes.
Yeah, I like that they've been putting in the time, and obviously he's wide receiver number one, so crucial to have that chemistry built up there. And you saw it up close. Did it look like they just had a rhythm together out there?
Yeah, JSN, I mean, he had maybe one of the more spectacular practices that I've seen. I mentioned it yesterday. He had a really good, two-handed catch, but then he had a one-handed catch, as well as Arroyo, and I know we have a clip from him we probably get to later, but he also had just a beautiful catch. So, yeah, Sam Darnold looked really good. And JSN, you could just see that he was fired up and really wanted to show out in this practice, and he did.